All right, we're live. Welcome back, everyone, to AJC and the Web Devs featuring very special guest Christopher Burns, my old buddy from FSJam. How you been, man?
Good, good. It's been so long since we did FSJam. I don't want to like stab you in the heart, but I kind of put it as like a past thing on LinkedIn where it's like, do you still do it? And I was like, past. And
No,
it's like,
I've
it's
been putting it the same way. Like, if anyone goes and looks at you, there hasn't been an episode in a year and a half, so people are gonna think of it as
yeah,
defunct, whether we think of it as not. I'm still
yeah,
thinking about bringing it back at one point once we both hit a good place in our lives where we could do that. And because I know you're
yeah,
currently in the flux about whether you're gonna start a company or get a job or do any of that. So I think once that's kind of settled, and we might be able to bring it back. But why don't you tell
yeah.
everyone, what you've been up to, how your life is going.
Yeah. So what's really interesting is startups don't always succeed. Startups, they say, oh, most startups fail.
I always heard 9 out of 10 startups fail. So most startups fail is the way that really people should
Yeah.
be thinking about it.
And around the same time, I've seen other startups close down, do hard pivots, and it's a long story of the journey of being a founder, creating a company, a 7-year long story from being a graduate to
Was
meeting my
that long?
co-founder Will. And yeah, I'm still relatively young. I'm only 28. So it's got a lot of time ahead of me. So yeah, we got to a point where we ran out of time and energy, I would say, more than anything else. And I think that's such a very hard thing that a lot of people struggle to talk about with, especially being a founder, is like your mental health, your current state of the business, state of, do you even want to raise another round or do all these things? And there's obviously so many factors that cause startups to not go how they are expected, but I learned a lot of lessons on the journey, and I'm sad to see it close. There was customers that were sad to see it close, but at the end of the day, it was the right thing to do at the right time. So I'm currently looking to new opportunities, looking to think about, do I want to move out to Americas, the USA to San Francisco?
Ooh.
Do I want to stay in the UK long term? What do I want to do in my life? Do I want to work at another company? Do I want to consult? Do I want to maybe start another company? I don't know yet, but there's tons of things that I'm playing around with and ideas that I just can't seem to drop. And I'm happy to speak about one of them today. It is quite early, but I think that's also kind of the fun. It's still like ground zero. It's you know MVP, you could say.
Yeah, I feel like you have just kind of the entrepreneurial spirit, which is one of the reasons I think why you'll probably enjoy America a bit more than where you're at right now. Because it's not that there aren't entrepreneurial people in the UK. Obviously, you were there and you found a startup partner, but I think you'll just
A lot
find a
rarer.
larger pool of people there and a system that is set up a little bit more to support it. But what you're saying about
Exactly.
kind of running out of energy. Dax actually had a tweet about that where he was basically saying like startups don't really fail, founders give up, or I don't know exactly how he worded it, but I think
It's very similar to that,
when you're doing it for so long, you did almost a decade. It was longer than half a decade. It sounds like if you're not getting the kind of traction you want, there's a certain point where it makes more sense to kind of cut your losses and try something else, especially if you're just not interested in it anymore. So
yeah.
I think it's cool that you've decided to do the pivot. I remember when I was first getting into tech, the late kind of 2010s. I feel like there was this trend where everyone had to have a blog post about their startup that failed, Like people would try a startup, then it would fail, then they would write the story of their whole journey. And I feel like you did this, didn't you? Didn't you write a blog post?
Yeah, I do. We can actually pull up my website. We can speak over it quickly. So this is a new website that I've built
It looks nice.
since doing the startup. What's really interesting is
Can we make the text just a
framework.
little bigger?
Yeah, framework choices is super interesting thing. Um, because this is
We got
built
a
in
podcast about
Next.js.
framework choices.
Yeah, exactly. This is built in Next.js, but there's almost like no reason for it to be built in Next.js. There's no server-side rendering. There's no like fetching of any content. It's just markdown. It's just pulling it all together. And part of me was like, it's what I know, and especially with wanting to um, keep my skills as sharp as possible, I just kept it in Next.js. And yeah, it's pretty cool. We have my humble past. Maybe even though I've done a startup for 7 years almost, there was a time when I graduated and me and Will actually created Below. This was our first startup. And I got a job in McDonald's for a year to allow me to take a salary to pay for my way
Yeah,
along the
like my
journey.
Uber Eats
So,
days.
yeah, I think it's really interesting because one of my ex team members, they were like, "Why did you put that on there?" And it's like, because you gotta be humble to a certain extent. I'm not better than McDonald's. It shows that I have a place to, uh, you know, lessons learned along that journey. And yeah, I wrote this article here that says about Everfund, what I've learned, what I'm looking forward at, what's next.
Yeah, people can check it out and read it. I would be curious though if you want to just break down kind of in like key takeaway points. What did you learn? I think that's what people would find most interesting.
Yeah, I think some of the biggest things I learned was very counterintuitive, but trusting your gut 9 times out of 10 was actually the right thing to do, especially with my time at Everfund. And a lot of my time, um, as we grew, was very much going against my gut feelings, was because the
Do you have a
companies were,
specific example of what was a time where like your gut told you one thing, but like the quote unquote data or the experts or whoever told you another thing?
yeah. Yeah, I think there's a perfect example around this, and it was our pivot to enterprise first tooling for Everfund. We spent the first year of our seed round focusing on developer tooling,
Mm-hmm.
and it was one of these paradoxical situations where I'd spent so much time on this on FSJam and being like a developer advocate that we kind of got into this position where we was now skewing Everfund to developers. And what we found was developers loved it. They liked how easy it was to integrate, liked how easy it was to get going, but they didn't have the buying power. It's very different to something like Vercel or Netlify. They're not even on the table to when deciding a choice of platform. So I saw this like pivot, a few months before Will did, and obviously I discussed it with him, but we got this concept of, and I think it's really important, and it's not that bad to say, but we raised our round on an idea, developer first tooling for nonprofits, and between me and Will and the rest of the team, we felt like we couldn't pivot until we had 100% proven that we weren't going to make it on developer tooling.
Mm.
And it was actually the product hunt launch that really was like that signal to us, like, yeah, actually, whilst we got a lot of like interest in quite high, I think we got like fourth or something, the actual charity signing up was so little. So it felt like
Mhm.
vanity, if you know what I mean. And that's
Sure.
when we
Yeah.
really pivoted to the enterprise first model. We doubled down on some of our enterprise customers. And that's when we actually started seeing a decent growth opportunity. in Everfund. So
you feel
that's
like you
one of the
should have
biggest things.
basically started with enterprise instead of going down the whole route of developer first tools.
Yeah, and I think, what we're going to talk about today is quite paradoxical as well, because it is a developer tool. It's something I'm building for developers and
It's your
such.
happy place.
But it's a really interesting area, and like I said, and we never regretted making our developer tooling because it made the enterprises so much easier to get across the lines. What made it harder was actually getting them keys to buy. You know what I mean? Finding the right buyer, and that's what it was really much more of a business pivot that did it. And there's always tons of things around these things, but I think founders' gut and trust is maybe one of the biggest things that I would say. Up to our angel round, I very much trusted that very well. But after we took a seed round, that's when things got more complicated, and you felt almost harder to trust your gut, if that makes sense, because now you had a team, you had loads of different customers and all of these different things going on, if that makes sense. It's much harder to manage these things. But at the same time, a hell of a lot of lessons learned that I will be taking on board when I go forward. Yeah, so that's my blog. I'm also, if I do go forward with getting a job out there, I have a hire me page of things that I'm looking for. Really in my next role, what I really did, impact, experience, and a little cow widget. But what's really cool,
That's cool.
what's really cool is, did you click these buttons here, Anthony?
No, it changes the
What?
color.
Oh, you are missing out. And
I,
also,
I'm not one to
when
click
you
random buttons. I don't know what they do on websites. Honestly,
see,
I feel
I
like
am one
some
to
people
click
have that
all
desire.
of
They
them.
have to click everything on the screen. I'm usually just looking at what the information is and what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
I'll miss entire features on websites for years.
I am massive this kind of person. I would just click everything. And I also put together a page of like everything I use, if anyone's interested, what kind of podcasting gear I use, my developer tools I use, and design, productivity, just all them kind of fun things. Yeah, this website was really fun to put together. I put it together in about, I think, 4 or 5 days. So it was really quite a fun project before I moved on to my next project.
Solid. Yeah, so the name of this episode is Event Systems. So, what is an event system? And are we talking about events like in the colloquial sense, like doing stuff with people, or events like a developer sense?
Yeah, so I think we're talking about as in developer sense in terms of analytical events. So what's really important, and to give context to why I'm really interested in this opportunity, is when we was building Everfund and obviously scaling with enterprises, the early enterprises that trusted us, we saw this opportunity where each one of them was asking for a different set of APIs. Oh, can we get the Facebook conversion API? Can we get the Snapchat API? Can we put our own Google Analytics onto the page? Can we put our own, XYZ onto the page?
Is this when you went
And
down that rabbit hole of scripts?
yes, and we will come back to that because I think it's
Widgets.
really
That's what it
important.
was. We did the FSJam widgets episode about this.
Yeah, and it's actually a lot later than that. It's something that I've thought about for a while. But one of the biggest things that was so important was we wanted to keep, uh, and something I was very anal about, was this super fast donation checkout experience. I didn't want to gunk it up with their Google Tag Manager, their cookie banner, their integration tools that they were using. I wanted to very much think of a way where we could take a unified event that would be clicked on, say, the front end. So like donation, checkout started, checkout finished, checkout cancelled, user behavioral events, collect them, then send them off through a relay. And that relay would then basically collect that event from the front end, and it would then split that event through what providers that you would want that data to go to. So for us in Everfund, we was using PostHog and Facebook Conversion API. And then that one event on the front end, without including any more JavaScript, was now sending data to 2 locations. And obviously, this is not a new technology. It's something that's been around for a really long time.
Is this something like
People.
Temporal does?
I don't know. I can tell you it's what Segment does.
Okay, because Temporal is the one I always hear is like the event management kind of
Yeah,
tool people
that's
talk
thinking
about.
the different kind of events. To
So
me,
I want to be specific about the terminology
yes.
here.
Yeah. Well, that is far much more like an order has came in, and now there's a list of things that you need to do, and then you set off a chain of programming actions based upon that event. So basically, think of like webhooks, as being this event orchestrator. So you get different type of webhooks that come back requiring different type of tasks. That's what that kind of event management is more used to. And you hear this often as a way to asynchronously handle tasks. So you pass all the events to an event queue, and then the event queue will start chugging through them to do the process. We're not talking about that kind of event system. We're talking about the analytical system that's behind user behavior. And one of the things that we can look at, and obviously along this journey that I've started working on, is so started working on this event system. And what does that mean? So we're so used to, you could say the first step to understand how well your website works is basic analytics. You see who went onto the website, and when they fell off, right? But then the second stage of that is understanding what pages they clicked. They went from this page to this page, then that page to that page. But what about what they actually interacted with on that page? They clicked this button, they did that user event. So it's very much looking at all of them user events. This is something that when you build something like a dashboard, you would track them kind of user analytics. So you'd say, oh, this feature is being used a lot because we have quite a lot of user behavior behind it. This feature is not getting much usage at all. And it can be then metrics on how you can track that usage.
Yeah, I feel like this is
event system.
What people talk about when they use the term observability, kind of.
Yes. So that is a really interesting umbrella term. So observability,
because that can also get into like logging and observing like your back end and what it's doing. But I feel like what you're kind of talking about is like the front end side of that.
Yes. So observability is this really big term, and we can look at it like there's 3 pillars of observability. Monitoring. Think about the lights on your dashboard of your car if you need to change your battery or whatever. Logs. So what caused that to error? What made it error? And tracing. So attaching spans. Is it a multi-part failure? What kind of caused that? So them 3 things are very much analytical tracking of how systems are performing. What we're talking about here is tracking that, but for the people side, the user behavior. And yes, I do think that term of observability this does fall under, but it's much more of a niche use case of that so far, because it's one of these things that normally gets added quite late stage into an application. It's not something that you'd look to add from day one. Oh, I'm going to add a on-click tracking handler to every single one of my buttons, or I'm going to track every time someone goes to this page. And tracking that is one thing, but then you also need a solution to view that data. And obviously, one of the solutions that's really quite popular lately is PostHog. Have you ever used PostHog?
I've not. I've heard of it though, and they have observe right there in their tagline. So
Exactly.
yeah, I think I kind of get the sense of what it is, especially based on that whole introduction you just gave. But feel
Exactly.
free to
Like,
discuss anything
yeah,
more
and
about it.
obviously it has the different areas. How PostHog talks about it is called product analytics, and
That's Noah's old
um,
company, Phantom. They got there. That's one of the big Web3 companies behind the Solana.
yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah, Assembly
Um,
AI. That's one of the integrations for Auto Show.
there you go. I'm really not checked on with all these AI companies. Maybe I should, but we'll get there. So, yeah, product analytics is what this normally falls into, working out how a feature works, how a feature is used. And what's really interesting about this is like, why am I showing PostHog? Because PostHog technically does what I'm discussing building, right?
Mhm.
And why I'm building. But they very much do it in a JavaScript, a client side rendered motion that very much focuses on like a full front to back experience of you install their tool, you put their click handlers where you track these
Right. So
events,
so you want to
and
observe the front end, but through server-side events.
exactly. And then that way as well, you also start reducing the risk of uh, ad blockers blocking your traffic, blocking your understanding and usage, because obviously you're not running a lot of client side logic. You're basically sending these really small fetch requests off to the relay saying this event has happened, this event has happened. And what's really interesting about this whole space is there's a big thing in the EU that really makes a massive deal to all of this, and that's cookie banners
GDPR.
and GDPR. Yeah, exactly. So as we know, cookie banners and such, they have massive effects on
They
experiences.
make every website worse by default, is how I would put it.
Exactly. And, we're very much used to cookie banners that look, something like this. We could say, let's probably reset the page. Something, very ugly, very, clunky. It's not native to your application because it normally gets loaded through a script tag. Customization, say if you wanted them to run the underlining logic layer, but you wanted to put your own cookie banner, you get restricted. So it's a really complicated area that I'm actually really excited to talk about and discuss what I've been doing in this area and the learnings I have, because what I've actually been building is the first part of this idea that I'm calling better events. It's not necessarily a company at this point, but I think it is quite interesting to think about a cloud solution for this.
What's the link for this?
So currently it's better-events.dev.
That's what it was. I saw you had the
Uh,
better hyphen
better
events, but
hyphen, yeah,
I
.dev.
saw it wasn't .com, and I was like, what was it? By the way, I
Yeah,
see you're
so
still running. What's this browser called again? I use
Arc.
Arc. Yeah. So, have you not heard that Arc is being like discontinued?
Yeah, I do have Zen on my computer as well. It's just kind of like picking to migrate over and picking a day, to do
Yeah. No,
it.
I know. I was also in the same boat. Once I heard that, like, I gotta get off Arc, so I just started using Edge because I don't want to use Chrome. But
I went through a phase where I used Edge
it's
loads as
okay.
well.
It's okay.
You know.
It's not the worst.
Yeah, so this is obviously still super early. It's
Yeah.
open source, and we can speak
So what's the Git
over
repo? Let's
where
get the Git repo link in there too.
it's /bear events -bear events /bear events.
Look at that.
It's pretty golden. We are still very early on this project, but there's been a lot of work already, and even behind the scenes. So obviously, I built maybe that I would call the spiritual, not the spiritual successor, but this is the spiritual successor to the event system and the cookie management system that I built in Everfund as first steps. So let's actually talk about building a cookie banner. It's actually something that everybody needs if you're going to be tracking any marketing, even if you're a US company. Legalities of it, it is long, and we're not really here to talk about that. But actually, let's talk about, building a cookie system. So let's load up the SDK demo that I've been working on. I've just gone to Bear event. Bear SDK demo. So here we go. And then let me just reset the
is that where you got the name idea from?
Yeah, it's very unoriginal at this stage, but it was just something
It's not
I just
bad.
wanted
I think
to
Better Events is fine name.
Yeah, I just wanted to stick a name on it and then start moving forward. You know what I mean? Instead of thinking, what is the perfect name, and going on this spiritual journey to find out, does it actually matter? It's a good question. I don't know right now, but that's what it's called currently. So let's talk about actually event cookie systems and how they work. So we can just make this a bit bigger. So, very much we're speaking in terms like EU right now, but obviously California has their own laws, Utah have their own laws, Brazil have their own laws. And something that we obviously forget about is we call them cookie banners, but really that is a misdemeanor of actually what they're trying to achieve. And it's actually privacy consent. So let's open this, for example. So the customize.
Misnomer is the
misnomer. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. And I thought, so this is funny, when Neo goes to see the Oracle, he has to accept a cookie to talk to her, remember?
Yeah. And obviously cookies are a really important thing, but there's also other things that we'll get into. So let's very much quickly understand this. So right now under GDPR, there's 5 types of privacy categories that you could say, and I'm going to struggle to list all 5 off the top of my head, but I think it's necessary, marketing, analytics, functionality, and I forgot the last one. The last one's
I've literally never even heard of this. Like,
Yeah.
I see the cookie banners all the time, but I've never
clicked
one
accept
myself.
or...
I will. Well, but so this is what's interesting though, is that from the user's perspective, you don't usually see all 5 of these. Usually they give you 2 buttons that say accept all or reject all. And so I obviously always click reject all if that's an option. But
Yeah.
maybe 1 out of 10, I'll see more fine-grained options, which is what you're talking about right now. But it's very, very rare they expose the fine-grained options to you at the beginning. You can usually click it and find it, but who the hell wants to do that?
Yeah, and obviously this is a very big there's a lot of balance in here between legalities and not. For example, say if the cookie banner pops up and you interact with the page, some countries will accept that as you've gave consent. Other countries won't. So some countries want a more block the access to the complete website until you have agreed to some kind of cookie privacy preference. Others will say, yeah, a little bit more fluid. But under all of them is, yes, this philosophy of when you click none, you're basically only accepting necessities, the minimum, the essential,
And functional, probably.
and functional. Yeah. These
And
trackers are
saying
used for
no to
activities that are
marketing.
strictly necessary. Exactly. So things like Google Pixel, Facebook Metapixel. And also many companies will define these categories slightly different because sometimes it's up for the user effect. For example, say if you're building a React application, and this is something that you normally take two paths on to implement. You either have someone with a marketing background that goes, let's use Google Tag Manager. And if you've ever used it, what a fun tool. And that's basically saying the marketer can put any script that they want into Google Tag Manager, and that plays by this same kind of system of 5 in the background. And then once they get accepted, they're just going to spam load of them scripts onto the website. And, this is how you see people say, my website is a, 90s to 100% on Lighthouse. And then the marketing department came along and it dropped to 50. It's because they start putting all of these JavaScript bundles onto the website. Yeah. So there's that method. Or the other method that, we did at Everfund, and I think it is still quite popular, is you look for the company's SDK or script, and then you basically whack it in your source code, and you basically say, just run. And the problem with that as well is you actually need to conditionally run that, conditionally say, oh, this should only run if they've agreed to marketing or analytics. So a more finite control of the actual functionality. Communication, that's the last one. So 5, the 5th one's communication. So things like
So actually I asked ChatGPT, and the 5 categories it gave is strictly necessary, which is called essential, preferences, which is called functionality, analytics, which is called performance statistics, marketing, which is called targeting advertising, and then social media, it says sometimes included under marketing. So some of these are pretty fluid.
Yeah, exactly. And all of that functionality runs in the background of restricting of the website's scripting. And obviously, one of the things I wanted to do with this project was to think, hey, we're going to make the most streamlined version that we can. And secondly, how can we actually add the capability for people to add their own cookie banners? So putting that control necessarily in the hands of the user and say, look, technically you can make a cookie banner look however you want, but we're going to give you a selection of cookie banners, saying things like React, and you copy it into your application, and there you go, you're done. So far we've spoken about two, 3 aspects in terms of this is a super either interesting area about these kind of toolings or super boring, and it's actually a massive thing the more you start scaling up websites. So what's actually really interesting is down here in the bottom right, and this is where we start talking about some really cool things, is that we actually have this developer tool that I've been building into the website to actually give observability into the categories. So as we can see so far, you can see that the consent is currently only set to necessary. So, if I'm building out my website and I'm testing functionality, I can quickly, you know, open the dev tool and say, oh, it's only on necessity. Are all the other things rendering, or are they not rendering? Really good knowledge of systems, so you can then build that functionality in. We've also built in so far as well compliance, so handling the different compliance layers, GDPR, CCPA, LGPD, and this random one that says US state privacy. That it's a lot deeper than that, because each state can define their own privacy laws as well. So obviously, so far there's a really, you know, big system here that's running in the background, and you know, I'm happy to go over it, talk about it in a deeper, talking about the
Yeah,
build,
just
what we're
full
building.
full trans yeah, full transparency. My wife and I are working out some like tax things that like have to be figured out today. So I'm kind of messaging and kind of this will only take like 5 more minutes, but you should like go through your code, your project, and talk a bit about how you set that up. And I'll be back mentally with you in 5 minutes at most.
So
Sorry.
yeah, no, it's totally cool. I understand taxes in the US are super different to things like in the UK. So
Well, what's
that's
crazy is we
actually,
have a professional tax manager, and it's even more complicated than it was when we did it ourselves.
yeah, 100%. So let's actually look at some code. How does this actually look behind the scenes? If you want to allow my screen to be shared, Anthony.
Yes. Boom.
So yeah, it's actually really interesting behind the scenes, because what we see is there's easy ways to structure this kind of stuff and slightly more challenging ways. But looking at how the web is as a whole, thinking about these solutions, if we built a React-only system, we would then very much be limiting the usability of this system to just React. So how do we look at taking a core? This is something that is really deep in build tools, in that pure TypeScript, and then adding on simple wrappers around it to work with different frameworks like your Svelte or your React or your Solid.js. So what we can actually see so far, and there's a lot of really cool stuff that I'm actually excited to talk about and go over, is we have, you know, a really simple package structure currently, where we have a core that has a core JS file and a React. So when we talked about that consent solution manager, you actually need to track all of that consent in the background, keep it in local storage. If they refresh the page, do you need to re-show the cookie banner? Do you need to pop up the cookie banner, close the cookie banner, pop up the privacy banner, close the privacy banner? Collecting all of that logic needs to be done somehow. So my first version of this actually had stupid amount of the word's not coming to me now. Use state.
Just regular React use state.
Use state. And I thought, actually, you know, how can we actually look at this going forward and make this as thin as possible? So one of the first things I started on was looking at state management. That's a fun one.
Good
because,
old
you know,
state management.
yeah, I'm a big fan of XState, and
Yeah, so you
I
got the
started,
stand-in here. Looks like that's what you landed on.
yeah. So I started building with XState and thought, you know, I like it, but then I was like, maybe it is a bit too overkill right now. I have a feeling I could maybe go back to it. I don't know. We'll see. because there's still a lot of things to build
I
out in this
remember the
application.
only time I ever used actually XState was when you were using an error fund. I did the StepZen integration.
Yeah, yeah, 100%.
It's
And
wild.
yeah, XState is it's fun. It's fun if you've got really complicated
I ended up
logic
having to
that you
write
need
docs for myself just to understand it.
access to. Yeah, it's got some really cool uh, dev tools. But I had literally an engineer that I said, "Oh, by the way, there's dev tools," and they're like, "No, what the hell? That would have made it 20 times easier to understand." So yeah, it's a big fundamental shift in logic. But something that I landed on was Zustand. So I'd never really used Zustand before. I just kind of stalled it and got going. You know what I mean? And what we have here is a really thin store of state that also gets attached to the window. So you attach it to the window of Better Event Store. So this is so other applications can use it as well. So there may be a use case where your framework doesn't necessarily have bindings for the functionality of the core. So this is where you would use window to basically communicate through that instead of like installing it as a dependency, if that makes sense. You attach it to the window and then you interact with it through this.
Well,
Things like
isn't it still being installed though at like the bundling step because you're still importing it at the top?
Yeah. So there's two ways to do it. Is installing the bundled version. So you'd install the bundled version and then you initialize it. And then the other method is IFFE, where you'd put a script on the page, and then that script would then initialize the window. So there's that two methods. It's normal if you think of it like how you see what Million.js is built, where you can have the custom widget by just putting the script onto the page versus bundling it into your technology. Because obviously, some tools that this package may go on could not have a bundling step. So you need to take that into the thoughts of it all. So yeah, we bundle it to the window, and then we obviously have things like callbacks and compliance types, compliance regions, and the GDPR. Here's the 5 types: experience,
Look at that.
functionality, marketing, measurement, and necessary. And obviously you have the longer descriptions. This tracker is used for, this is used for this.
I know you're saying you don't feel like cookies is the best word, but I feel like what you're building right now, Better Cookies, would really make more sense as a name than Better Events, because this is really like giving you a lot in terms
Yeah.
of the cookies.
So the only thing that actually but it's such a misnomer as well. Misnomer. What?
Misnomer.
Terrible misnomer as well, as in like, what about local storage? Because how this saves it to your browser, so when it reloads, is not cookies, it's using local storage. So it is one of these things where
I thought
cookies
are usually, well, sure. There's there's the technical cookies, yes, but then there's like what people think of who are, because people who are not developers know about cookies.
Yeah, stuff on your computer, but they don't know what session storage is or local storage. So yeah, that is something that, it's one of these weird things where it's like, is it a privacy pop-up or is it a cookies pop-up? The word everybody knows is cookies pop-up, but actually it's more like a privacy pop-up at this point. So that is the core bundle that we just spoke about. And all we basically do is strip it out currently as a store. And then that's where
So
we use.
you probably explained this at the top and I wasn't paying attention. So you're using Zustand on the back end, not in React.
Yeah, no. So it's no backend. This doesn't have a backend yet. That's the stage 2 of the company where we build in
Okay.
the event system. So think of this as just a simple way for you to do everything client side and restrict marketing tools client side. The
Mhm.
stage 2 is building that event system in
Okay. Yeah,
that's
I
simple
guess I'm
for it.
just asking, and again, I'm sure you explained this. Why is
Yeah.
JS and React two separate things in core?
Okay. Yeah, I think it's a really good question actually. And also, even though it's called JS, it's actually TS, you know what I mean? But
Sure, yeah.
we're not going to call it
So
TS.
is that just like a node server? Like, what is that?
No, so it's for the front end. So if you think
Okay.
about putting it onto a WordPress website, that's where you would use the JS core and then wrap it with PHP bindings or jQuery bindings or bindings that don't necessarily have a front end on it. So
Okay,
right
so let
now,
me put it this way. Does this make sense? So when you could build like a vanilla JS website where you have like your HTML and your CSS, and then you inject like your JavaScript. So is this kind of like that's a React front end, and you're injecting the JS part?
exactly.
Okay.
And what it allows you to do is not use a rendering framework like React. And it allows you to say, okay, what about a Svelte version or a Vue version without having to necessarily bundle all the React into it. So,
Mhm.
um, so yeah, we use Zustand
So
that basically
fuzzy.
creates a store in the backend in the uh, core, and then we then right now super thin wrapper, but actually then have a hook, and this is when we talk about how that React layer. We want to try and keep that React layer to be as thin as possible and have as much logic being handled by that core that is agnostic to React. So no matter what framework you use, you're not rebuilding a lot of logic. So all this is a very simple um, uh, context, a React context that also detects country. This is something else that needs a bit playing with further, but depending on your middleware and if you can work out the user's country, you could also say, oh, they're from things like the US, don't even show them a cookie banner. Oh, they're things like they're from the European Union, show them a cookies banner.
Mhm.
So you want to be intelligent in that way of only showing the consent options to those who need it. And a simple store get where we do this use effect hook to subscribe to the state change and an unsubscribe. Because basically, if you don't do this, your hooks could be updating the store, but then your React never knows when to actually update the components.
Right.
So because that's the thing, because it's attached to the window, you need to make sure you're watching for changes to that object on the window to
So
make
did
sure
you
that
just build this
React.
with just straight React? You're not using a framework at all?
Yeah, this is just straight React at this point. There's no Next.js in it
Wow, that's
at
really
this
funny
stage.
that doing this with just straight React, but you use Next for your personal blog website.
Yeah. Yeah, because at this is the SDK. It doesn't need a framework technically. And something that I've been trying to be very conscious of is as we spoke about things like, but what about the cookie banner, the privacy model, trying to keep that out of the SDKs and inside the end users apps. Very much like we'll go into it now. Um, very much like ShadCN, what you actually notice is when we go to components on, say, the docs website where we were, we actually have these components. So we have 3 components currently. And you basically have this cookie banner that I'm going to be uploading to a Shad repository, so you can literally easily install it. And technically, you could remove the privacy consent hook and use this for completely your own logic for handling cookies.
Yeah, so you made it
But
modular, so it's easy to
yeah, exactly.
slide. And Fuzzy's saying here, Next.js is a platform.
Yeah, it's a framework that's you have to think of it as React is the rendering logic. So things like you could build a complete cookie banner with just JavaScript by adding things to DOM, setting the class names,
It's good old web
uh,
components.
yeah, things. But actually, we want to say you're very used to your framework. You're very used to, say, certain components. Let's just make it as easy as possible to get your components, hook them up to the consent solution, and then to go literally from there. So as we see, we have what we were showing before, accept all, reject, handle close, checking if mounted, and then the actual cookie banner. And basically, then we actually do something interesting. Wow. Have you ever used a React portal?
Oh man, we've talked about this on the podcast a bunch of times, and no,
Yeah.
I've never used a React
Yeah.
portal. It's like an iframe, right?
Yeah, but basically it reject
Or is that
it
the regular portal? Because there's the web portal, and then there's the React portal. They're
yes.
different. So I'm thinking of
Yes.
the web
So
portal.
the web portal is like an iframe, but React portal basically pulls that component outside of the DOM tree and injects it somewhere else. So this is basically saying mount banner content, i.e. what's above, to document body. So outside that JSX DOM tree that you have created to make
Oh,
sure it's
that makes a lot
always
of sense,
sitting on
actually.
top
Uh-huh.
of the DOM tree.
Okay.
So yeah, this component is going to be on a ShadCN, a ShadUI registry, and we can speak through the docs website because that's actually really cool as well, and the work I've been doing on that. But yeah, you have a cookie banner, the widget of like we said, the widget is actually that consent toggle system that we showed when you click customize, but completely standalone. So if you actually wanted to embed it into a web page like privacy, you could do. And then we actually have the model version. So this is just, using really simple HTML, CSS to HTML and Tailwind to achieve these things. But in essence, it starts becoming really powerful because it starts putting that control of that cookie banner from a third party's tool directly into the user's code base where they can, change the HTML, change the text, change the Tailwind, and exactly have it exactly how they want it to look. Because obviously, every platform has it slightly differently. So this is pulling that logic out, allowing them to copy and paste it into their app and connect to it via
Fuzzy's
our
into it.
hooks.
He said this is
Yeah.
super interesting. I agree, and your code is very clean. What you just explained was very easy to understand. Yeah, Fuzzy says the same thing. Code looks great. Yeah, no, it's
Yeah.
I feel like you definitely it doesn't feel like you've over engineered anything. So that's good.
Yeah, and
In the past, that's been a bit of an issue for you, I think.
yeah, but the thing is, it's so easy to over engineer it.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
It's so easy to think, oh, we'll put the cookie banner inside the SDK, so we'll provide a cookie banner automatically for them. And sure, there will be a version where we give out this included cookie banner. But one of the biggest things we want to do by default is give a headless functionality to controlling, obviously, that consent management. And
Mhm.
that's where like we said, the developer tool comes in to track these things, to see what is rendering, what scripts are being fired off, and all of that obviously is going to be backed up by a ShadCN registry. Have you ever actually looked at a ShadCN registry and seen how it
Okay,
works on the back end?
I've never used ShadCN at all. I've absolutely no experience. Obviously, I've heard people talk about ad nauseum for years, but
Yeah,
never gotten into it. I was never really
it's
in the
like,
whole next world, you know.
yeah. So actually, it's super interesting. So,
Chris, do
this
you know
is
who Arsenal and the Spurs are?
football teams. They are football
Football.
teams. Yeah, actual football.
Yeah.
Football that I don't.
Okay, because Fuzzy's
Well,
dropping sports updates here. I think that was probably more for you
that's
than
good
for
to
me.
And yeah, so what we see from this already is setting up a ShadCN repository. So to be able to copy the code, let me share my browser and we can talk through this part. So, and this actually, what's funny is actually not delayed the project, but it was like something that you really want to do that sounds so easy. And let me just readjust the window. Something that normally sounds so easy to do, and you're like, oh, let's make it easy.
Keep going for the next couple
Yeah.
minutes. I'm gonna be listening, but I need to be off screen just for a second. But you can keep going on this.
So you better make sure you're listening because I'm going to be explaining ShadCN to you. So ui.shadcn.com. So obviously, what we're super used to is looking at all of these components and being able to easily copy them components into our code directory. So that's using things like the ShadCN CLI tool. But when you click manual, you can see what it's going to do. It's going to install a React accordion. It's then going to copy this code into your directory, and then it's going to update your Tailwind. And, you know, off the bat, that's super easy. If you want to have that manual set up, if you want to change things, really quite easy. But where it gets really interesting is we started seeing other systems start to be developed where other people, an inspiration for ones that I built as well, have built these other components. Like you can see, oh, how do I get this really cool marquee? And then again, they use the same ShadCN system to achieve that. And to do that, you actually have to spin up. Oh, my tab has actually. My tab was actually not moving. Sorry.
Yeah, so I was about to say you're only showing your one screen. I'm
yeah, no, I thought my tab was moving.
And Fuzzy is again saying, "Chris, this is awesome." So it sounds like you got one fan and hopefully a user already.
That's great. Great to hear. You know, we are really early. This is like ground zero.
This actually strikes me as the type of project Fuzzy would especially like because of kind of how you've built it and what it's even aimed to do at all. Just knowing Fuzzy very well. No, because Fuzzy cares about privacy. He cares about web standards. He cares about those kind of things. These are the types of things, and he cares about yeah, that's right. Fuzzy knows. Yeah. So no, I think this is cool, and these are the type of developers you're trying to reach.
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so let's talk about ShadCN. So this is actually, to give you a tutorial on it, Anthony, is that when
you can bump up your font one more.
Whoop.
So this it's like a component library / design system / stuff that's pre-built to make your code, you make your front end look less like crap and hopefully function better.
Exactly. But the big difference of it is it copies it into your code base. So when you look at, say, this command
So it's
will
super
then
duper modularized to
copy
each
it
thing.
into your code base. So you can see here, this is the code it's going to be copying into your code base. And then
Okay, I can already see why
we
people
import
like this
it.
then, actually, because this seems like the biggest issue with using something like this is not having the granularity to modify the components.
Exactly. So what I've been working on is actually
Not
setting up this ShadCN like system for them cookie components for that pop-up banner privacy model, and I've made some progress in it and some blockers that we'll discuss the deepings in a minute. But what we see as well is things like Magic UI, another quite popular one, where same kind of aspect, but this one's more
bump your font way up.
marketing components, you know, than
Bump your font up.
sorry, it's more marketing components than dashboard things, if that makes sense, like a bento grid. And then again,
As he
you
says,
see
the toast
the code.
component would be his prior art for this.
Yeah, the toasts are big. And you see that this command still uses the base ShadCN command, but then it says go to this repository and pull the file. So
Interesting.
let's actually look into that a little bit deeper, because I've actually made progress on it of actually how it works. So if you wanted to create your own files that people can easily copy into their own directories, it's something I've been working on. So
Were you using ShadCN with Everfund?
So no, actually, we never actually used ShadCN with Everfund. We used a lot of the Tailwind base components from back in the day, and then heavily customized them on top. When now, like my marketing website, that was actually, when we look at that, this is actually mostly ShadCN components, but they look completely different. This is a card component, a button component, but it looks completely different because it's heavily customized. So, so this kind of concept of being able to copy and paste things into your code is getting more and more popular as the days go by. So this is why I thought it was really important to say we're not going to control that base experience for the cookie banner. We're gonna create components that you're going to then copy and paste them into your code base, so you can customize that however you want without having this generic banner that everybody has. And
Dev is complimenting your stash, by the way.
Thank you.
I said the same thing when the first time we were on a call a couple weeks ago. I was like, "Hey, look at that stash, bro."
Yeah.
Fuzzy, this is also streaming on YouTube. I'll drop the link in here.
Definitely. Yeah, Fuzzy, if you can catch up, and happy to talk anytime. Just send me a DM or something on Twitter, X, or whatever.
All right, yeah, later, man. Thanks for hanging out. I'll just send you the link on Discord.
Yeah. So obviously having these repositories is actually really quite a cool system, and it's actually like super early, because I'm pretty sure I was building out my ShadCN repository system as the maintainer was maintaining it. So how do you actually create these components? So what you see is that there's basically a build step that goes with it. So You basically
Okay,
have to
real
create
quick,
this.
since Dev
Sorry.
just hopped into the stream, I wanted to try and explain what you've done so far in a concise way. You can let me know if this actually makes sense or not. I
Yeah.
said you're explaining your new project, Better Events, which uses ShadCN to create a bunch of hooks and components for managing cookies and user privacy consent widgets.
Yes. So ShadCN for the front end components, backed by SDK that handles the state management. And something that I forgot to talk about that is actually a really big deal as well is if you actually have a cookie banner, the GDPR law, you actually need to track every single consent. So every time someone accepts the cookie, you need to keep that as a line in a database.
This is kind of hilarious because it essentially forces every company to keep detailed records on all of their users, which seems like the opposite of what people wanted.
Yeah, and like an IP address that backs up the consent statement to be like, yeah, as you see, this IP address did consent.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's kind of backwards to a certain extent, but you also need to hold that consent. So that's what the next part of the solution will be, is obviously holding on to that consent statement for you in terms of database. But yeah, right now we're just talking over building your own ShadCN repository to allow you to allow other people to copy and paste components into their code bases. So as you see, you build out this registry system that has some
Can you make your
Zod.
font one bigger?
Yeah, we're on.
Maybe two bigger, actually.
Is that big enough?
One more.
So yeah,
Yeah,
so
there we go.
you see that you have this registry folder, and then it has this schema, and then it pulls through each of the areas of blocks into this unified schema. And basically, I actually took out the block because I was working on it. But you basically, we will show, let's actually show it on. That's the end. Now let's find the actual official one. I think it's actually ShadUI, not ShadCN. But I'm actually
I would just Google it. Just Google GitHub and the thing.
Yeah.
I never use GitHub search has always not worked well for me, honestly.
Yeah. Do you use GitHub search? Yeah. Okay, so here we go. So let's just look at his repository because obviously it's full. But what we see is when we go into www, it's the same structure where he has this registry file structure. And then when we go to blocks, you'll see that then you have this JSON array that basically says what the block is. So this is sidebar, a description, what components it requires. So like the atomic structure. So
This
the
is really
sidebar,
interesting. This reminds me of like infrastructure as code for your UI.
Yeah, it's basically that. And then what files, what the path is currently, and then what path to target, i.e., put them in this specific location, put them in this specific location in their directory. And then obviously that all gets compiled together into this R repository that sits under the public folder. So someone can then use the CLI to fetch the components. This is all selling good right now. And the reason I say that is because I thought I had everything set up correctly to use the repository system, but I currently get an error on the SDK. But he literally did update it yesterday, and he's literally updating the CLI right. I think today as well. So
just
I
coincidentally,
suspect,
you happened to be fixing an edge case that you had.
Yeah, and he's been building in where is it?
You do have a talent for finding the specific way to break a really well-used project.
Yeah, exactly. He's been adding in, I think, this build command. See, look, yesterday, add a new registry build command. And this is him abstracting his registry build system to allow you to build a registry faster without me maintaining all of that code. So I can create a very standalone, smaller file structure and then use his build command and run it instead of me actually having all that same code duplicated in my front end as well. So that's really, really cool.
Well, scroll up to the top of this. I want to see what he's using, if he's using it. Okay, he's just doing path. I was curious how he's doing his CLI, because I'm using Commander.js.
I think.
Oh wait, no, he is using. Wait, go back one. I think he is using Commander. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, Commander's awesome. I've spent because Auto Show I was just using it as a CLI, even though it has like a front end server. So I've spent a year building a very, very in-depth Commander.js CLI. It's awesome.
Yeah, there's definitely, I definitely respect.
That's why I recognized it as soon as I saw it. It looks like it's name, description, program. It looks like he's using Commander.
Yeah, it's something that I think is really cool that I've not used yet. Maybe there might be a need for a CLI on this project sooner or later, but we will see. So you can build your own repository system to copy the code into your code base. I'm just pretty sure I implemented it in the few days that he was changing the spec. That changes the repository system, so it doesn't work. So these things always happen to me. Why me? But what that will allow is then to go back to the website. So we go back to the website. That will then allow you to go onto the components and be able to easily copy them into the code base. So if I just
do all these integrations actually exist already, or is this work in progress?
Let me show you some more of that in a second. So
I was like, you already got a Laravel integration? Are you serious?
It's just the code how to install the components. So ShadCN components. So I'm actually just going
to. So you're really leaning in on what ShadCN is giving you to do a lot of this.
Yeah. So you see here that if you wanted to install. Oh,
well, look at that! Found a bug.
It just crashed my whole website. No, what? No, I'm joking. Let's just put
the website's nah, no PHP for you. I refuse. Error.
This was the day. This was the day I was finally gonna move over to PHP. And it just doesn't want me to. But basically, they're just the default. They're just the default components.
How did you create that animation? That's on the top right now.
That's using a video. It's a component that streams a video. It's actually a magic UI template that I bought and could start customizing.
Okay. So I was just curious. It's cool. It's a very cool 3D design. Did you make that?
No. This tool. No, I definitely have no clue how to do that. So let's also take a step back and talk about documentation tool. There's been so many, and I've looked through so many, and actually finding a good documentation tool, I think, is really hard.
Yeah, no, I agree.
One that looks really decent. So this is actually Fuma docs. Have you heard of Fuma docs before?
I don't think so.
Oh, there we go. Teach something new. So here we go. So this is Fuma Docs. It is I don't think
More
it has to be
self
next.
stuff. The website looks literally identical to the ShadCN website.
Yeah, but it's not. I don't even think it has to be Next.js.
Nice.
But basically,
website.
it's actually really, really cool because it has a few plugin systems. So if you go into
imagine
creating,
also once you go into some of these, it makes sense to go into all of these because they're being all built with each other, right?
yeah.
Like
So
this docs thing is probably built with ShadCN, I bet.
It's something slightly different. It's more homegrown, but it uses Tailwind.
So they
But
all use Tailwind, yeah, and Next.js probably.
yeah. So if you have like an open API, it's got like an open API plugin. So that's something obviously as we build the relay, this will be really
When you
useful.
build the GraphQL API.
Don't talk to me about GraphQL. I love it, but I can't talk about it. This is highly inspired by ShadCN. There you go. So it's not quite ShadCN, but
so I was right. Yeah.
How we do it is so we do this. So we use the MDX pages. Yeah, and then it renders it through. So as you can see, it's very simple. It comes with light dark, right to left, CSS variables, and it actually
this
comes
is
with
like
some.
This is like Docusaurus or the Astros starter that's just a docs page. I forget what it's called.
Yeah, and it comes with some nice default components. So I was actually gonna show the progress on this one. So this is how it will work. So basically, it's not fully finished, the MDX page, but you see that you'll have this preview at the top that shows the component plus the code.
So give you a quick little render, like a code sandbox kind of in the browser.
Exactly. And then it will obviously have the install the dependencies, give you the basic usage, give you an advanced usage, give you a privacy you know what I mean? Like, I still need to work out exactly how I'm going to structure it. If I'm going to structure it as like 3 separate components or one component, it can get really complicated. But the point is trying to make it as easy as possible to get this code out into your code base. And
honestly, man, I could use this for auto show because I am going to have an app that people are going to be using hopefully all over the world. And I have not even thought about solving this problem yet. So if you were literally building a project right now that is meant to solve this is something I could actually use in dog food for you.
What, as in installing?
I need a cookie thing. Like
a cookie banner. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, I need a cookie
I was about to say,
banner.
like, yeah, exactly. We all need them sooner or later. So obviously we know we'll have the core, that's the brain of the operation. We'll have the components of the operation. So yeah, that's like a brief overview of what I've been building, and go back to the demo to view again SDK.
No, this is sweet. We should schedule another stream in a couple weeks where we try and install this in auto show. I think that would be super interesting.
Yeah, I should literally have a beta out by then. And as we see, this is it working in Next.js. Like, for example, we can see if I accept all, I think I've just crashed it. But if I accept all, you see, oh, I accepted all of the consents. Then if I refresh it and click reject all, you see I've rejected all marketing. You know what I mean? And obviously this is a lot of logic that gets hidden from the user very
It's
easily.
snappy.
You
It's
know?
going fast.
Yeah, and obviously you can see and what's really interesting is
But hold on, go back to the compliance thing.
so building out
So
the
you have
compliance for.
so are these what's CCPA and LGDP? I've not
So
heard of those. I know what GDPR is.
CCPA is California Customer Protection Act.
That
I
makes
think off the top
sense.
of my head.
California Consumer Privacy Act. Okay, I
Yeah,
have heard of
and
that.
then
I'd forgotten the acronym.
and then LGBD is
That's
Brazilian
Brazil's
general law.
Brazilian General Data Protection Law.
Yeah, so the whole goal of it is to also try and keep it up to date with the current laws and everything.
Mhm.
So we don't have to look at this like a sacrifice, as in like, not why can't the boring stuff, legalities, these things, how can we make them so easy so they're like a fly? So you go, oh, I'm going to be installing Google Analytics. If you're going to be installing Google Analytics, then you need the measurement category turned on. So when you track measurements, it does that. So let me swap tabs and we can actually show
Yeah, I
you
mean, I can say for sure I would not have built in anything for Brazil. Like if I were to just go with creating my own thing for auto show and I don't use a tool like this, like I would look at GDPR, maybe the California law too, and that
maybe
would
pull
be
up a really shitty cookie banner from somewhere. But yeah, so we can see this is the MDX file as we see how it gets rendered out. But if we actually want to pull through more marketing choices, that's where you can say, oh, also pull through functionality. You know what? Let's just pull through measurement as well. And then as soon as you save that, and then kind of annoying because
Are you working off multiple monitors right now?
one ultra wide screen. So
Okay.
I'm lucky. But then I lose my tab like right now. I'm like, where's my tab? Okay.
Yeah, right now we're
So
looking at better events SDK demo.
Yeah. So now when we hopefully pull up the local version, what we'll see now is you have more of the options. So trying to make it as easy as possible to track each functionality. So some of the really cool ideas that I have that I have to really see if I can actually implement them well. So one of them is as well, I believe I actually have it in the SDK, or I refactored it out a minute earlier. Yeah, I refactored it out. But what we're super used to as well, and let's show you how you'd actually set this up. So let's just, for example, pull let's just pull this, for example. I don't need to put anything. We can just type in. So say we're just going to a blank docs demo.tsx. See, already knows where I'm going with this. But one of the things that we obviously want to do as well is we also, and actually, I think you can actually do this right now slightly differently. Let me just pull this, give you a demo of this.
Do you think you could wrap up in the next 5 to 10 minutes, Chris?
Yeah, 100%. We're literally at the
Yeah.
end.
Yeah, sorry,
and
I'm
then-
just I gotta handle some stuff. Normally, I'd be able to go as long as I need.
So it's going to equal something different. There we go. So this is for example of how we spoke about what we would do. So say you have a script. So there you go. Just a bullshit, just a quick script that we're talking about here. And say you whack that into your code base. Soon as that React gets rendered, Next.js is then going to render that script, add it to the page, and start rendering it. Think of it as like a marketing script, right?
Yep.
But one of the things that is really important, like we keep talking about, is, but what about conditionally blocking the render? So what you actually want to do is say, I think it's not consent info, it's I'm challenging myself here because I've literally forgot the code I wrote already. Earlier, we want not has consented. We want I can't actually find it, but basically, I know. Yeah, consents.
Consent.
Yeah.
Figured it out.
It's not looking at the functions. Yeah. So you want consents, and then you also want to just say things like necessary. So what that will do now is that will conditionally render this script if necessary is given. Pretty cool, right? And obviously, I want to build it into the dev tool. So wherever you conditionally render something, we hold on to that knowledge. So we can say, oh, here's everything you're conditionally rendering, your PostHog script, your intercom, your crisp, and here's the ones that are not rendering. So as you test out your application with the different levels of consent, you then get to have that developer debug at the same time. So yeah, that's been like a 1.5 hour overview on this super cool project that I've been working on. I think it's really, really cool.
That's great, man. I think it's really cool. Now that you've explained it to me, it definitely makes total sense. What you built and what it would be for, and why I would want to use it, and how I could even use it in my own project. So you've gotten much better at explaining your code. I will say that first of all. Good job. Yeah. And I'm still just gonna have to say I don't think Better Events makes sense as a name. I think that's gonna really confuse people. But that's just the opinion of one. You'll have to find out other people's thoughts on that.
To me, right now, it's more a temporary name. It's just something that I didn't want to think, oh, I want to build this project, but what can I name it? You know what I mean?
I really think Better Cookies is the thing to call.
I know,
it, dude.
But it's but the thing is, soon as you start doing the event relay, the consent management on the back end as well, you're going to be like Better Cookies, but also you've got an API that handles back-end structure as well, and a ClickHouse database, and you know what I mean?
Because you're thinking too specifically of the technical term of cookies and how they work in the browser versus like local stores. Like most people think cookies, they think the cookie banner, like that's what they're gonna think of. They're not gonna think of the general cookies as they're implemented in the browser. What happens if I just
reload it to rename it to better
privacy, but also
better consent.
Better consent. Yeah, I don't know. Having the word consent in your thing is, I don't know. It's just people's minds go to weird places. At least mine does.
Yeah, it's definitely a massive thing. And obviously there's the other thing about using the tool for completely custom payloads as well, and keeping track of other payloads that I have a few ideas and potential people that are interested in that as well. So yeah, this is like super early. We're on like ground zero, and I still am looking for another opportunity at the same time, and I probably should be doing that more so than building this
Yeah.
out. But
hire this guy.
yeah, I'm open for opportunities. But you know what? This could be just a side project. I might open GitHub contributions to it. Or it could go all the way and I turn it into a company one day. I just don't know yet. And that's where it's really cool and interesting.
Yeah, I think it's cool that you're building something open source that anyone can kind of use, and then you might turn that into, a product or a company. Because I feel like you did kind of the reverse with Everfund. You built a company and a product, and then slowly open sourced pieces of it. But the whole platform obviously was never really open source. Except didn't you open source something right at the end in case people wanted to use Everfund?
No, we didn't really get the buy-in from our investors to do it.
Okay.
So the thing
That
is,
makes sense. There's no reason to fund
yeah,
something that's not going to have any return.
I've been thinking about another company in the nonprofit space or a side project or such, but also a lot of it also thinks about this solution as well. And not that I'm like edging two birds with one stone, but it's like if I solve my consent issue over here, I could then pull that into another project over here and take 50% of the work. But it's a massive thing about verticals versus horizontals. What I'm building here is a horizontal. But Everfund was this vertical in this very specific area. I'm really excited to build it in the public, speak about it, get contributors overall. So yeah, it's super fun, and happy to speak to anyone about it.
Yeah, this is awesome, man. I think we'll start wrapping up here, but I would definitely love to do another stream and try to integrate this into my own project. So let people know your socials. I think we dropped kind of all the better events links already, but just one more time, if people want to check this out, it's better-events.dev.
It's a $14 domain. I'm not sold on it right now.
I mean, it's a great domain, and it's a great name in general. But I think events as a word is kind of overloaded.
I also think because it's not got the event system in yet, it's like it's a two-part problem. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So
and then you're burned Chris on the X's.
Burnedchris.com. You'll find all my social links on there.
It says SF bound here in your description.
You got a dream. You got to put big things out there and say these things, because I think to me it's like if I never say this is what I want to do next, I will never achieve it. So it's something that I've set my eyes on, of something I want to achieve, and I'm gonna work hard in a company, or I'm gonna work hard on building my own things and scaling them. And no matter where we go, it's gonna be really exciting. And I'm sure there's tons of things that we can speak about more, from APIs, databases, some really fun things that we're going to be building over it. Better events.
You're manifesting. You're a manifester. It's one of the reasons I love you. Super glad that we could reconnect and see what you're doing. We'll be in touch for sure.
Yeah, I love hanging out with everyone. Thanks. Catch you soon.
Bye, everyone. We'll catch you next time.